the 30th of April 2022, as you can see by the date. And since it's known that calendars in that capacity are only created within a certain time frame, so that lets you know that today is the 30th of April 2022. Please make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Make sure you like my official YouTube videos, and if you're going to leave a comment, do what you can to actually be respectful and have etiquette, please. And go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. So I'm gonna, what is the term by RuPaul and those particular factors? I believe it's called spilling the tea, or the shade aspects, if I remember correctly. So I'm gonna spill the tea in that reference. So in reference to my first performance way back when, in the year of 2010 at the Uniform Fetish Ball, I had asked Steve of Temple of Flesh if I could do a performance. I had chosen the big band swing song by the Denver Mile High Club to create the entire routine myself. I created the outfit, sequence, and everything. Even my makeup was completed by me. I didn't have anybody assist me in that, including in the booking of that. There wasn't anybody. All of my performances, modeling, there was not anybody who was in charge of that except for me. So that's understood. So I contacted Steve or Temple of Flesh on FetLife and asked if I could do a performance, because I wanted to do something that took back what was wrong regarding 2009. I wanted to fix and repair for myself because of the situation where, against my will, without my consent, a group of males picked me up after conspiring together and then carried me onto a stage without my permission, knowing that they were playing a prank, knowing that I wouldn't have done it on my own because they thought it would be funny. They wouldn't have done it as they admitted to a male, which obviously proves sexism. And so, after a discussion with my biological mother and finding out a few situations as to a similarity regarding the sexism at Crystal Lake South High School, in that reference of Maid Marian and the Robin Hood situation, I made sure that if I were to do anything, it was by my choice. And if anybody caused me any needless problems, I made it where I would not tolerate certain things. So if anybody had caused certain needless situations, I wouldn't tolerate it because of my rights. And so since I had that violation of my rights at Temple of Flesh, due to Celtic Cowboy, also John Vidial, had met him in the San Antonio pagan community when he was married to Kim at the time. And he had made an arrangement with whoever he had made an arrangement with without my consent as to that. And he got chewed out for it multiple times because while he thought it was funny, he didn't seem to understand I did not. He thought that I would get over it, whereas I would not. I still refused to because it was against my consent. There wasn't even a chance for me to consent, and it was even acknowledged that he knew I would not consent. He knew that. which lets you know in regards of what is supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle compared to what I dealt with. And so he also knew about the Excalibur Fair situation. So did his now or then soon-to-be ex-wife, Kim Video, who I also met in the San Antonio pagan community. And I had described what occurred at Excalibur. She would be the individual in reference to the corset with the different furs that she had put together. So now it's called the Sherwood Fair in comparison to Excalibur Fair. It's in the Bastrop, Smithville area of the state of Texas. And so, for those who know what I'm talking about. And so, in the year of 2010, I contacted Temple of Flesh and I asked if I could. And I thought it was befitting that my performance, being the dance aspects, in regards of, it was an extremely symbolic reference. So not only was it a big band 1950s, though modernized through the Denver Mile High Club of the Star Spangled Banner reference, it was in the city of San Antonio, also known as Military City, USA. And so my particular viewpoint was, if you know from my website, www.susanmealing.com, and my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, though also in reference to finding a silver lining in the book section on my website, www.susanmealing.com, you know that I was invited to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. You know that I had been in the Army, though I did not graduate basic training. You also know, in reference to my having earned 26 scuba diving certifications. You would also know from the pictures I personally took regarding the Vandenberg area after I handled what I handled on my own without any assistance from anybody, realistically. Yes, I earned 26 scuba diving certifications through my work, though. Not somebody else's work, my work. So the symbolism behind that particular creation I did after I booked my performance, which Temple of Flesh did not pay me for, just for clarifications. Again, I had booked it myself. All they'd have to do is look at the archive message as to who contacted them. So if they gave finances to somebody else, that was their choice, but they didn't actually pay me. Same thing in 2011 regarding Exotic Easter, for that clarification. And so I don't know what the normalcy is. However, I acknowledge I'm the furthest probably from what other people consider as normal, though it was simple to just ask me. So I had been the first performance that was put on stage. That was not by my choice, that was by the choice of Temple of Flesh. So I had gone to the area and I had my outfit that it was the Marine Corps dress blue version of with the Heaven's Angel outfit as far as that was concerned. I've done a few modeling areas in that particular outfit. And that includes on some airplanes and stuff like that. So I had went from, now while some people might consider it as a stripping, no, it was in the definition of, however, it was more of a unveiling in my viewpoint, because if you look at my website, www.susanmealing.com, I do a lot of artistry. Everything I do, I make a purpose and have a reason. Even with this, I have the reasons why I choose it. It's not up for somebody else's interpretation because I'm the one who knows why I'm doing it. So I started out with my initial BDUs from when I was in the Army. I actually informed Medical Hold Unit that I was going to do this in the year of 2000. They thought I was whatever as far as that was concerned. I actually informed them, I see where I'm doing this. This is a vision that I am having. And so some of the individuals at Fort Sam Houston thought I was going to be disrespectful to the uniform in comparison to what attempts I was making with what words I could explain. Because sometimes certain people, specifically probably those especially, who have had a head injury. Now mine was on Palm Sunday in 2000, and I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain that lasted 8.5 years. So there is the symbolism in reference to my BDU uniform in the year of 2010, where the MRI and CAT scans fully showed that all of the damages from the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, the subarachnoid hemorrhage was gone in every capacity. I had survived my work in regards of where it's known that there are, even though there is a difference in reference to the pattern regarding the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, and the Navy in reference to the BDUs. So I figured, especially since it was no longer a pattern that was in use, that it would be capable to be utilized. So that's the first portion up. Then, additionally, because I thought, well, the camo, the symbolic aspects in reference to what most people associate camouflage with, which would be hunting. Additionally, to the reference of. So those who understand the difference between my scuba diving compared to civilian recreational scuba diving would be capable to understand the difference between why I would wear my BDUs in that regard. And so there were a multitude of factors. Now, my white boots had to do with my white scuba fins because my colors being black and white. And so then, after a certain point, and again, I came up with the choreography myself. Same thing in regards to another performance that I'll get to. And so I did the makeup with the eyeliner, the stars with the blue, which is an irony in reference to Failsafe, the cover of my book. That is a fiction book series, though is irony, I suppose, in certain similarities regarding at Fort Sam Houston in that specific BDU, by the way. That specific set was specifically the set that I wore when I informed Fort Sam Houston that's what I was going to do. So the light eye makeup, as far as the light blue with the red eyeliner and stuff like that, although it was just crayons, so I could make the joke about certain Marine Corps stuff. But also the stars that I created myself. I created my entire look for each and every aspect. So after my BDUs were taken off, because by my choice on the Star Spangled Banner, take a look at my pictures when it comes to the Vandenberg and that American flag waving as far as my work. And so then, in regards of the kind of sailory-ish, kind of coasties-ish, kind of marine-ish, sort of, and yes, to a degree, kind of Air Force-y-ish, but then also because there's the Sailor Moon aspect that you cannot deny from the glitter. So all in one including regarding the formation of the US Space Force. And so, granted, back then in 2010, no, I knew that there was NASA. I knew that at some point in time there was going to be the equivalent of the military version of, because I knew. And so now I know about E equals MC squares, SpaceX. I didn't know about it, obviously, during the time frame of my performance. And then, yes, there's Amazon Jeff Bezos in regards of Blue Origin, which is an irony because of my eye makeup to the book. And so I, in that point in time, was just, well, glitter. And because I had to camo to be capable to go and watch Sailor Moon as a child. Well, a lot of symbolic. And there's so many other symbol in every aspect of each outfit. Because even in reference to my BDUs, as well as that first change of outfit, there are certain things as far as that outfit that are not seen, but are seen if you were close enough to actually see it. Because of what I actually did to the different glitter. I know that when it comes to Miss RuPaul, that she would understand certain aspects in those particular references. Then there's also the facts of where I was born and raised going to. The irony, but giving credit where credit is due. Since that's called that. So, in that reference of then the next portion of where you see the white boots. Now, I know up in New York City, I can't remember what they were called. Though it was a little bit of a tribute to where I was born and raised. It was an honoring of that, especially in Military City, USA, which is San Antonio, Texas. It's Uniform Fetish Ball. It is not a fetish to me, though. So, where I was born and raised, specifically New Jersey, those who know about a specific color flag of black and white, well, I didn't forget them. Not in my scuba diving, obviously along the Atlantic, but I had hung my New Jersey flag in the state of Texas. I always remembered. I may not remember every name or every face in the combination of, though I did remember. And so there was a huge amount of symbolism additionally because of those who know certain fertility capabilities because of my healing energy and what I'm capable to do if I so choose. If I don't, well, I have that choice. And so in those references regarding that, there's the fact that there were people I knew who were having fertility issues. And so as a child and as a teenager, people would come to me and they would ask me. Now, 9 times out of 10, they would ask using audible words. We would have a discussion. And this would be at Old Tenet Presbyterian Church. There were a few times where individuals had seen me in other locations. They knew who I was, and we'd talk. And I'd give recommendations. And sometimes there were certain connection aspects that these situations would be as the situations would be. And it's just natural. The ocean is about fertility. Those who know about certain aspects of lore, that is a situation. And so there's certain factors, even in reference, and I can see the irony regarding Sapphire, though there are certain situations regarding clothing. And so I had requests There, in one particular reference, there's a female in regards of what she was dealing with, and what are you doing? Why are you playing with my tutu? And, oh, it's just fluffy, and it's like, I hope that that's better now. And so there were certain factors as it was, and in some ways is. It has to be in a certain factor though, because thou shalt not steal. Otherwise, that backfires. That's a different situation completely. See, there is a difference between asking and having that etiquette and respect in comparison to those types. Thou shalt not steal. And so in regards of Temple of Flesh and that whole thing, I did pay for that. I actually paid the iPod fee. But I wasn't asked if there was any in that reference of because of whatever situations at that particular point in time. Nobody asked me. So then in reference to the next outfit was the American flag bikini. The only location I could actually wear a bikini is on land. I know that you're supposed to be capable to go in the water, except I swim a certain way, so that doesn't work. There was one time in Arizona, I literally had to change my bathing suit, which were bikinis, 3 different times because I went and dove into the water, and just from my dive in, the strap snapped. Just from the force of me diving into the water. And so the fabric just literally snapped off. It wasn't even the first time, because there's up in Wisconsin where that occurred regarding, and I left it as it was because the bikini bottoms were bigger, but the actual halter top had that same issue. Because when I was swimming back to shore and when I got on land after the whole situation, there were actual tears just from me swimming. So I can't actually wear bikinis in the water, though I do make a joke that my Farmer John wetsuit, which is a long john wetsuit, and then mixed with the shorty, and it's 14 millimeters at the core, 7 millimeters on the extremities, I joked that's the closest to a bikini I can wear. Because it really is, it won't break. However, on land, yes, I can wear a bikini because I'm not going in the water. Otherwise, I just can't do it. And this happened 2 different times at the pool in Scottsdale, Arizona. 2 different times regarding 2 different days, and the bikini straps actually breaking. I even had a bikini that had an inch thick strap, and it broke. I did one dive in, and it's like, okay, well, I got it. That's not even a wardrobe malfunction. That's just it broke. Damn. I didn't realize I was that strong of a swimmer. And then there goes back to a prior official YouTube video of mine, if it uploads, regarding seminary school. Which was from today, so that is an irony of ironies, the 30th of April, 2022. And so, in that regard, the white boots, the American flag bikini, the only bikini I can wear being a wetsuit, the Farmer John, and the American flag in the ocean attached to the Vandenberg. Not the only American flag down there, I will clarify, because of where I went. However, the last one I saw before surfacing, and it was as it was, what can I say? It's a good day. So, I kind of figured, there you go, that works, I thought that was in a short brief. Well, after my performance, I didn't know I was supposed to speak because nobody told me. Nobody informed me that I was supposed to speak. And after what had occurred the year before, that was a no-go with the guy holding the microphone, which there's also the fact of, in my performance in 2011, I actually still had that issue where the microphone actually electrocuted me when speaking. And so it was just as it was. That's why in certain references, if I can actually hold the microphone, without which there's just the facts of still being zapped. That's why I've gone in other reference to the megaphone, because there's no zapping when utilizing the doohickey mabob that has the button for the megaphone for that type, or the button for the part that doesn't have that. So it looks like a trumpet in a different way. Nonetheless, that's that. And so later, the next performances went on the stage, and that happened to be, the next performance was a group called the Glory Hole Girls. And they did a law enforcement sort of theme because it was the uniform fetish ball. And afterwards, I walked up to them and said, "Oh, great job." And all of them, they were just like, "Oh, right." Which I actually meant, but I don't know, I guess it makes sense in reference to the particular female who was hosting at the time regarding her uniform when because she was the feature something another, stunning female. But yeah, there was that. And so, okay, I don't understand what those particular issues are, but okay. And so I just figured they were exhausted because of the work they did. And I didn't think anything of it because that was just, well, they must have been tired because that was a lot of work. I was exhausted from the work I had done, and I created my choreography, so I'm sure that was my thought. I don't know their side in that particular reference, but it was as it was. Well, in DFW, my first performance in DFW in comparison to San Antonio was at a Fuck Valentine's Day, I think, maybe? Or maybe it was a Halloween one, but it was still run by the Glory Hole Girls. They had worked with Temple of Flesh in that reference, and I had asked if I could do a belly dance sequence. And somehow it went from 1 to 2 because of whatever they were, I don't remember what their theme was. And so it was okay, well, I can do that. And then they had asked me to pick out music for Dusty Dawn. And Dusty Dawn said she had done a lot of belly dancing before. And I was like, okay, well, I have to do an outfit change in between. So, okay, that's fine. And so I guess there's some ironies. And so my first performance was in I think it was the red outfit, and just did the belly dance that I had created. However, in comparison to what I was informed, the stage was nothing like what I actually thought it was supposed to be from the description of. And so everything that I had put together had to be changed on the spot. And so I did as I did, as best as I could. And it turned out however it turned out. And it was as it was. It wasn't, I wouldn't know anybody's opinions or thoughts as far as that was concerned. And so I just did my routine. So then afterwards, I ran all the way across the seated area towards the back, further down the building for those who know that particular event. And and then I had to do a couple turns and then go get to the changing area to switch from my red outfit to my blue outfit, and arrange the ISIS wings, and do all this other stuff, all within a short amount of time. And so it worked out as far as the song that Dusty Dawn said she approved of. I was like, all right, that's fine. You wanted me to look into it. Okay, fine. And again, through the iPod situation. So when I get all the way there, and I have to run because of the actual distance, for those who know how big the seating area was, and then the area that was the actual changing room, which was on the other side of a wall pavilion and some other stuff. I mean, it was almost like, I don't want to say it was like 500 feet or 500 yards, but possibly because of the distance. And then after that, I had to run back after changing in a swift little, so I could give the reference of the really bad flirting situation in 2012, where I had my corset on and whatever skirt I was wearing with whatever heels, and then go to the bathroom, really swiftly change, in like 60 seconds, and then get into this like blackish dress with like a little yellow bat oval thing, and then and then that didn't go very well. So then go and change real swift and all that, and then get back into my corset and whatever. I can make fun of myself extremely easily. And so changed into the irony, the blue and silver, as far as that was concerned. And those who are in belly dancing, you know that the only way to wear ISIS wings where you don't have the drumsticks slide out is through how it connects around the neck, and I did not like that part. Though I made it work and did the what have yous as far as that was concerned. Again, I don't know how it actually turned out. Because I didn't see myself, that's why. Just in case anyone in this lecture video during listening were to wonder, I wouldn't know how it looked because I didn't see it. Because I was doing it, that's why. Yeah. It's kind of like those people who have asked me what the timeline was when I was in a coma, and I told them that I don't know, and then they asked me why I didn't know the time when I was in a coma, and I answered because I was in a coma, and then those people got angry. I didn't understand why. I was the one who was in a coma. That's good. And then I'm the one who had the head injury, so it's one of those, I don't understand that. But fine, whatever. And so afterwards I changed into my gladiatrix outfit. And so it was as far as that particular scene, although I am still upset when it comes to my little green M&M. For those who know Paige. And so it was as it was regarding that. And then, and I didn't even get to warm up. I was so upset as far as how that went because of how much attention PETA needed. It's like, this is the one I personally wanted to play with. This is my little green M&M. I had tools created just for my little green M&M. For those who know who Paige in that reference. And so anyway, it was as it was. And so, so then if there was a payment, I didn't get the payment. I'm the one who had arranged it, and it was as it was. Well, I was actually supposed to do a fire scene in reference to the upcoming event, with the way everything was going in reference to my daughter's situation, doing what I could as far as my son was concerned, while additionally taking care of myself as best as I could after the scuba diving stuff that nobody had asked me about. I mean, the situation in that particular reference regarding the state of Florida, because that's where I scuba dove out of in the year of 2009 in August, and then the state of Texas in reference to those particular factors, there wasn't anybody who ever had the common sense to just ask me with etiquette and respect about my scuba diving. Though, if the automatic assumption from those people happened to, the irony be, their military complex, and then knowing that I am medically retired from the Army, there still is no excuse for those civilian recreational scuba divers to have ever spoken with my son and my daughter. Or my daughter. That's just the facts. It doesn't matter who they were. There was no excuse for them to speak with my biological mother, biological father, biological sister, and or my ex-in-laws. There was no excuse. There still is no excuse. There's no cause. There's no reason that is considered acceptable at all whatsoever. It's just the facts. Anybody with common sense would know the only person to speak about in reference to my scuba diving would be me. Sure, you could verify that I took my scuba diving seriously. However, it doesn't change the fact. So if civilian recreational scuba divers complained because in their Mandarin view of only having earned an advanced open water certification in comparison to having earned 26 scuba diving certifications, which by the definition of what it is to earn a scuba dive instructor card, which again, I already assisted with the recovery scuba diving and actually instructing in multiple certifications I earned. By the definition of what the requirements are, I actually earned, by the 26 scuba diving certifications that I earned, a total of 2.5 scuba dive instructor cards. By the technicalities, by the definition, because before I ever booked my trip going to Cancun, Cozumel, I had over 100 scuba dive hours before I booked that. So since the two certifications, which were drift scuba diving, and I can't remember the other one in regards of June, before I booked that trip, I had over 100 scuba dives as far as hours. Additionally, those were my 24th and 25th scuba diving certifications in regards of Cancun, Cozumel. And so the lack of common sense, lack of respect, lack of etiquette as far as my work and my scuba diving, if their Mandarin view was in reference to the highest as to what they would consider, while those people complained about how I physically look. So here's the irony. In 2009, my hair was similar to the actual hairstyle it is now. There are those who know what the average, normal female look for a scuba diver in the year of 2009 would be. I had my tattoo, had my prayer, had this tattoo, these tattoos, and then those, which would include that tattoo. Oh, and that one. I don't know if it can be seen in that reference. So in that regard, as far as what could be seen by the bikini regarding my scuba dive wetsuit, those people, as to how bigoted they were in the civilian recreational scuba diving in the state of Texas, because of their issues from just those tattoos and my hair. Easily, all you have to do is look at from the time frame of 2019 after I returned to the state of Texas, where this part and this part was waxed. And any complaints regarding my hairstyle, that is exactly what they complained about most likely in reference to the year of 2009. Same thing in regards of my tattoos. So as far as my skin, from people who were proud to vote for 44 just because of him being black. That's what I dealt with. So what, from the time frame of 2019 through even now in the year of 2022, just from my updates from the ornery PSA on my website, www.susanneedling.com, including in reference to that 3-volume book series of The Adventures of Susan Needling's Scuba Diver Extraordinaire, that's what those people had treated, or I should say mistreated me as. That's what those people did. And most likely, hypothetically, as far as whatever they posted or sent in a text message or phone call, most likely whatever they said, I guarantee you they said that to my face back in 2009. If it had anything to do with how I physically look, if it had anything to do with my swimming out at Clear Springs Scuba Park, that's what they said about my scuba diving. Just replace the word swimming with scuba diving. In that reference, that's what I dealt with in person, face to face, in person regarding those people. In that hypothetical that they talked any smack regarding that shade sort of stuff. That's what those people did. And if they don't remember, I'm sure with the merger, they'd be capable to be shown if they need that additional proof. So that's just what I dealt with. On top of my biological mother, biological father, biological sister, and ex-in-laws, and any of their cohorts in that hypothetical. It's what I dealt with. On top of the semi-truck I-35 southbound situation. That's what I dealt with. So from 2019 through 2022, any complaints, I guarantee you, I dealt with that from the year of 2000 through, obviously now, but most specifically 2000 to 2013, in person, face to face, in person. So while some people might claim whatever they claim, you also have the facts in reference to online social media at that time. Whatever in regards to my original FetLife page regarding Lady Doribel, again, you can go to my website, www.susanneedling.com. For that, you could also take in reference to the Leatherati article that I had posted from FetLife that I had created from that forum post that I dealt with all on my own, as well as the other factors of. So you have a physical representation in regards to the 2020 Austin rallies. In a different situation, though you have that physical symbolism in that reference of, for the clarifications that have been capable to be found as to what I personally dealt with. So while some people during that time frame or later on might have whatever opinion of whatever, there's the proof. Which I'm sure, even though I warned those people throughout the San Antonio, DFW, and Austin areas about technology, they would be capable to figure that out. And so whatever desktop or laptop or cell phone, whatever they used during those years, if they don't have those originals, well, that is what it is. That's on them. I know I already acknowledged in my updates in the ornery PSA regarding my journal blog on my website, www.susanneedling.com, that's what I dealt with. And then there is the facts as to what I dealt with in the hypothetical of anybody that showed up during my Medal of Honor art project trips and or in reference to Club Sapphire and or in reference to what the original show was called as the Guardian Assholes. Because if it was in a lie, well, that's automatically a breaking of the Ten Commandments. If, in that hypothetical of. And that, ironically, in reference to what was supposed to be called the Guardian Assholes, if they had anything to do with anything regarding my books, my work, my Medal of Honor art project trips, and or Club Sapphire, those people, as to those situations, if there's any connection to those in the state of Texas, proves to you how I did not do anything the way those people did. So in the Dominant Mentor program, which I was taking care of and earning in those capacities, I started in the city of Austin and then transferred to the DFW area while taking care of my daughter, doing the best for my son, dealing with the after effects from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, because even though the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain was no longer found in the MRI or CAT scans from the amount of blood that was in my cranium. That's how much blood was there. It took 8.5 years for it to not be in my MRIs or CAT scans. That's how long. But those people, as far as those types in that hypothetical, they had their issues in the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle, had no problem with males who had tattoos, and in the what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, not just in the scuba diving situations, additionally in of any lifestyle at all, in the BDSM and swinger sectors, in of any one of them. I'd expect that in regards of Christianity. In the what is supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle, regarding BDSM and swinger, that was the last place I would ever think would be so bigoted just in the similarities regarding the females as to scuba diving in the recreational scuba diving areas, which obviously there is the machismo aspects in reference to some of the males. Whatever is capable to be proven in that hypothetical of. And so these, random claimed female, they said they were feminists for some of them. So I transferred from Austin. I had completed the boot camp. I had completed more than what the least requirement was for volunteering and what was the least required in reference to electives before transferring to the DFW area. And so the only thing that I had to take care of in reference to the DFW area, I did ask to actually meet with if I could do one more elective, because it's better in my opinion. And so while doing the classes, I wrote about, in Finding a Silver Lining, that situation in reference to Lilith, or Lilith Gray, whatever her name was, in regards of FetLife. She was a part of the Glory Hole Girls. She had 2 swallows that were tattooed on her chest, for those who need that clarification, ginger red hair. And so she had been a teacher. That would be the one who had done the situation in what was the dungeon area at the sanctuary, and everybody taking steps forward and steps back, and my back against the wall. Where, at the end of it, as far as who would be, more advanced compared to, like, if you had a degree, 2 degrees, what level of degree, your biological gender, so on and so forth. And before even halfway through her questions, my back was against the wall. There wasn't anybody remotely close to where I was by before she was halfway through her questions. By the time she actually finished her questions, as far as these different, placement aspects, for those who know the sanctuary, about 99% of the people were more than halfway to the other side of the wall in comparison to me. More than. So it was closer to 2/3 of the way to the other side of the wall compared to the area where you walk in from the common area in the sanctuary. My back was against that wall, which was the other side as the common area, and they, as far as the rest of them in that Dominant Mentor program out of Dallas, were 2/3 of a distance on the other way to the other wall. That's how that was. And so when she had told people to turn around, to see where everybody else was. I didn't really need to. Realistically. But I did just because, there it is. And so, but everybody knew what I was dealing with to a degree during that point in time regarding my daughter, my son, those situations, as well as, at the very minimum, the after effects from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And so, it was as it was. I dealt with, in regards of the Club Femme group, the males and females having their issues as to my skin because of my tattoos and my hair. So there's the female who others would know as Matrice Renee. Her and her then fiance actually went off in regards of my physical look. So while Patrick might not know that or remember that, I dealt with that. Though I would not be surprised if later on, in those references, the comments were made. That's what I dealt with. Not just in Austin, by the way. I dealt with that in Austin over that Thanksgiving situation, where I was the only reason why anybody got to eat turkey that day. Nobody would have had food except for what was brought by each of the rest of them. You might as well have had hors d'oeuvres, because that was all they would have had if it wasn't for what I took care of that day. Because they were frozen when they arrived. And there was only 3 hours from that for the cooking aspects. They wouldn't have eaten if it wasn't for me. But what is appreciation? What is thanks? What is gratitude? According to those people, it was their complaining about how I physically look. I don't personally view that as appreciation or gratitude, but that's what they actually did that night. Those females actually, to my face, had actually done their little snide sorts of, oh, well, it's a good thing that you were working in the kitchen. And when I turned and looked at them and said, yeah, it is because you wouldn't have had food, I wasn't joking. They actually laughed. Lady Robin, on the other hand, was like, no, she actually saved the entire event. You wouldn't have had turkey if it wasn't for her. And the other femdoms, as far as or whatever, they were like, oh, ha, 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 ha. And I got called pretentious. I got called snobby. Those females, literally, ah, ha, ha. That was how they actually laughed, and people who know who they are would know whether or not that's accurate. So those females, as far as that was concerned, oh, ha, ha, ha. Oh, Lady Dory, that was so awesome that you were so kind to be capable to take care of. You mean how I ran that kitchen? You mean how each and every one of those male submissives listened and were informed and did as I instructed without any hesitation? You mean how the event actually was capable to go off without a hitch? You mean how each and every one of those male submissives were capable to follow what I told them to do, so that way you were allowed to sit down and put your little feet up? You're welcome. Yeah. For female dominance, you might be smarter if you actually paid attention in comparison to that. But hey, thank you for the allowance to make sure that was actually taken care of. They had been capable to serve the food because I ran that ship that tightly. So you're welcome for that food you were allowed to eat. And you're welcome for that event going on as smoothly as it had. Additionally, you are welcome for those comfortable little chairs that you were sitting in, because I moved them around for that. You know, you're welcome. That's what a dominant female takes care of. And additionally, takes out the trash without, messing up my outfit that day. Or evening, I should say. That's how I roll. So yes, I do appreciate the males in the kitchen. I did make sure that their health was taken care of in reference to not doing certain things and making sure some were in safer areas, not knowing what any health aspects were, but yes, that kitchen full of, if I remember correctly, about 20 to 25 submissive males, yes, my commands went well. And so those Club Femme females, so those who would actually know and those references would know. And so later in 2011, while in the Dominant Mentors program and taking care of my daughter, while taking care of my son, and taking care of myself as far as the after effects from my head injury, after my subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain dissipated fully, but still having dealt with the daily headaches and the however many times a week migraines, which the pain levels, those who understand chronic pain, in those references when a migraine fires off, words are as words are. And so the memory deficits and the cognitive disorders in those references, and then the time frame from my scuba diving, as far as my earned 26 scuba diving certifications, but all that other work that I took care of myself. In all those areas of water that I cleared out myself. So for those who know about that yellow tentacle in reference to the Vandenberg scuba dive, what do you think I cleared out in the state of Texas? Did I ever get a thank you in the correct way? Was there any gratitude for what I took care of? No, because why would you? What would ever make anybody actually ask with etiquette and respect? Before and after, out to the Vandenberg area in the abyss trench that I went to. So, those types, those references, just took care of that. While also doing healing stuff regarding the waters, ordained reverend and all. But then, those types. So it is as it is in those references. And so by the time of Exotic Easter in 2011 and the issues with the poster, as far as that went and stuff like that, and dealing with at the actual event of. So there's a guy who would know as far as why he was assisting, I guess, and the green room in reference to the female, that she was a brunette with hair to here and a gray uniform, outfitty-ish sort of thing. I didn't have that luxury. So I dealt with as I dealt with regarding that, and while Patrick complained because he didn't want to listen to what I told him to do, the irony of ironies in reference to that particular group. But he wasn't in the kitchen, so why would that matter? He wouldn't have learned, obviously. So in that regard, during the event of, maybe Steve and Krista and some others remember when my hair was longer and dark brunette in comparison to the style it is now. And of course I didn't have tattoos back then. And so it was as it was, and handling those situations, those unattached males or attached males that, and those references of, oh, how dare, nobody gave permission for certain things, and then handling that, and then, hey, is as it is. And so, but that was during the actual event. That was what I actually dealt with throughout. So that's why after the performance, I was gone. Because I wasn't willing to deal with everything else. Not that I was informed of any other factors. So then in 2012, I was supposed to be a DM. I actually had the training for it. But also, then I just ran security as far as that was concerned. So in the reference of the Dominant Mentor program in Dallas, I had written about what I had learned in words, because those who actually knew me in person, face-to-face in person, would have had, if they had common sense, regarding the after effects of my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, as to having been retaught the names of colors and having been retaught how to count to 10. Then you add the factors from my scuba diving. And for those who actually paid attention back in 2009 through 2010 and 11, I actually didn't speak much. I'd only speak at certain points in time. Because why would anybody have common sense to actually ask about that in comparison to the complaints I dealt with about my after effects from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000? Well, I dealt with those people having the nerve to actually complain to me about what I deal with. What lack of common sense in those regards for as many people who told me that they think that they're the most intelligent in the universe. I don't know how lack of intelligence you would have to be to not put together on your own. Why would you complain to me about what I deal with? As far as their complaints, how they had problems with how I sounded like a broken record. Well, maybe if people actually spoke with me in truth. Here, maybe this is what I need to do. If people actually spoke with me in truth, with etiquette and respect, maybe, just maybe, if that actually occurred in comparison to those types of people expecting me to remember them because of whatever they remembered, as far as the different locations, as to where I may have been, depending on who they were, and the difference of the background, as well as the event and the other people there. Maybe, just maybe, if they had actually done that, then I wouldn't have sounded like a broken record. And that's how some of those people spoke at me. So when I described how people talked at me as though I was a toddler, well, that's an example. I didn't ever speak to my son or my daughter that way. And so that's actually what I dealt with from those people in the state of Texas from 2000 through 2012. Random events actually had people, male and female, actually speak at me that way. It's actually how it was. Some of them might wish to remember otherwise. That's how it was. So, now, no, they didn't do this. The tone of voice, that's what I'm referring to. But for this particular, official YouTube video of mine, again, please like and share my official YouTube video link, as well as all of my official YouTube video links as far as whatever you watch and listen to. And if you choose to leave a comment, please make sure to have etiquette and respect, and go to my website, www.susanmealing.com. So, that's what I dealt with. And so, because of knowing that I was dealing with what I was dealing with, and because of documenting my own progress, because I could on FetLife in comparison to Facebook, as far as the Dominant Mentor program, because common sense, and it's kind of common sense, and because you can only do certain things, especially in the year 2011, regarding, you couldn't just save it the way, I don't even think you could do it now, and so in reference to a posting. So it was either post it or take the chance of losing my notebooks, which I've already dealt with because of those types of situations. Those types of people that feel that they have a right to something that they don't, which in that reference, it's called thou shalt not steal. So, it's a reality. So there are those factors as to what I dealt with, and while whatever needless drama was occurring during those times, not just with what I was dealing with, of course, because I know I wasn't the only one dealing with needless drama, well, whatever else was going on that other people would know about. Because unlike some people, I actually had a lot of stuff going on in my life. And that's before Irving 2011. So while some people might have thought that they were whatever level of importance in comparison to what I was dealing with, I mean, again, I've asked, what is humanity? What is compassion? What is common sense? And those references. So then when you take in consideration, okay, I had to do my updates. So any of the stuff, I'm sure you could find the patterns of behavior in reference to the time frames, especially from 2009 through 2013, by the time of 2019 through 2022. So 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and then, 2013, 5 years. What full circle has there been in regards of from 2019, 2020, 2021? Still 2 more years by technicalities. But as far as in reference to the state of Texas, though because of 2020 in March regarding the supposed COVID situation, I guess people have more time in those regards. So then, in reference to up in Washington State, I had every right for them, for those clarifications. Not in the necessarily reference of the guardian asshole thing, although whatever. More along the lines of Club Sapphire. Because of the knowledge that there probably were people who did not consent to the situations in reference to the guardian asshole aspect, as well as most likely did not consent in reference to the people from the state of Texas that I once knew in person, face-to-face in person, stirring up needless drama, although the hypothetical of those types of people who just, don't have anything better to do with their time or money. Those silent partner types that, don't actually care. Because if they actually had common sense, who's the one and only person to speak with? in person, face to face, in person. And so then there's my journal regarding the military BDSM collision. So any needless problem, which includes the so-called COVID, that is no different than what I flat out put in writing regards of the military BDSM collision. Those types of people who could have just asked in person, face to face, in person, in comparison to thinking that this would be better. In a reference of a Rihanna Mimi, that's my opinion of you right now. Each and every one of you. That would cause me needless problems, knowing what I already dealt with. And in comparison to humanity, because that would not be considered humane in the slightest. You might think so in that hypothetical. If you have that connection in regards of this particular lecture, I'm informing you officially, it's not. It won't ever be considered as humane, ever. As far as those situations. No matter what you might try to convince yourself of. Just for the clarification, because where it could have been in person, face to face, in person, asking me in genuine truth in comparison of, see, that's the difference between the technology aspects and literally a human being in person, face to face, in person. That's a literal fact. Because obviously, with this official YouTube video lecture, it's through that in comparison to an actual human being. So those types of people who have been more accustomed to that in comparison to actual humanity, you know, in person, face to face, in person, common sense. What is humanity? Well, I've already clarified that a long time ago. So, while some people might think that's better, I'm officially informing you, I disagree. 100%. And quite frankly, I don't care about somebody else's opinion. Because again, no different, I'm the one who actually deals with it, not you. That's the problem with those types, those nosy individuals who think they have a right to know when they actually don't, because they know that if they actually had the right to know, they would ask with etiquette and respect, in person, face to face, in person, in comparison to stirring up needless drama. Just the facts. Because what right does anybody actually have to know that hasn't actually asked me in person, face to face, in person? What is the legal aspects of? Last I checked, that's in international waters. And in reference to the Atlantic area of the ocean, specifically in the abyss, in one of the trenches, last I checked, there's actually no law. There's no governance of any country. So there's not actually that aspect of common sense could have just asked me in comparison to this garbage, in my opinion. Because if a bunch of people broke the 10 Commandments and claimed that they did whatever of whatever instead, because you know, the proof as to whatever they said regarding how I physically look, their wishful thoughts that as a scuba dive instructor, that actually meant anything. in comparison to my work. And there's 26 certifications that I earned on my own. So then there's the facts that yes, there are a few individuals who had been the certifying instructor for those. How difficult was it for them to remove the binky from their mouth to actually speak with me in person, face to face in person, and actually speak with me? You know, in genuinity and truth, in comparison. But you know, if they contacted people who did not ever have the legal authority or right to be involved in my life, especially at the fact that I was biologically above the age of 21 years old? Or did people not put that math together? Because, you know, all you wanted to pay attention to was the Mandarin view instead. Or you couldn't be bothered because, you know, your time in comparison. Hypothetically, of course. But again, from the time frame of 2019 through 2022, as far as the updates and all that. So individuals who I once knew in person, face to face in person, who made the choice to stir up needless drama, what is humanity? So I was listening to the Greg Gutfeld show, a few of the clips and stuff like that. And those gender studies types that didn't ever see how quickly their degree was going to fade out because of the facts. That's the facts. That's the reality. So, in comparison to what some people might have thought was their right, it wasn't ever their right. Especially in regards to, it's my life, my choice, my right. And so if people assumed whatever they assumed in comparison, how many needless problems have occurred in my life because of those types? In what is supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle, because I didn't consent to not being informed officially. I wouldn't consent to that, obviously. Unlike some people. So while some people might think that that's acceptable, again, I am officially informing in this lecture, it's not. See, in the Armed Forces of the United States of America, if you are going to do something, you have to have a waiver. If you do not have that waiver signed, or make the attempt of that actuality, you cannot ever make certain claims. It's a legal factor. So, in that specific reference, where I officially informed in honesty and truth, that's my choice, not in regards of any other factor than you cannot ever hold me accountable for anything. Realistically, especially in regards to what is supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle. Because if you were officially informed, whether you read it on my profile regarding FetLife, whether I told you in person, face to face in person in a discussion, and or my Facebook, etc., you officially were informed and you had the waiver that you read. by the legal definitions of. So while I didn't have to clarify or any of that regarding my updates in reference to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, well, that wasn't for people in the state of Texas. Now, was it? Because people that I once knew in person, face to face in person, that I would have considered as a friend, I would have spoken with. They would have reached out to me in genuinity and truth. And yes, there were some, to a degree, in regards of social media, not online capacities, in the official capacities of the ones that I once knew in a longer amount of, in certain references, comparison. Well, that's their choice as far as, because, common sense. And so if there was that stuff in Washington State and somebody thought I didn't know my name, I mean, what level of ignorance would you have to ever think I didn't know my name? On top of ever thinking, in regards of ever paying attention to the difference of the location as well as the plant life and the background and all that sort of stuff. What level of incompetence would you have to have? I don't know. It would depend on those types. And so where in what is supposed to be the adult consenting lifestyle in the BDSM areas, where there wasn't a legal ID that you had to actually show, such as at Temple of Flesh or the Sanctuary, I gave my real name before ever discussing in reference to my model name or my FetLife name. If you don't remember that, that's not my fault. That's everybody else's fault in comparison. So at Sapphire, it was a requirement for that. And so since I didn't find out about Sapphire, like in any discussion, like I didn't do any of that, and it was through a different measure, it's not that I ever denied being myself. But similarly, in regards to Portland, Oregon, common sense. So where some people may have thought otherwise, no, you just chose to play a game, as I called you out for in this hypothetical, on my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmeeling.com, because anybody with common sense who would have known me in that reference of would simply just have asked me. There are two people who actually did that. They didn't officially, but they brought up the name Dory, and then I quickly clarified it instantaneously, automatically, without any hesitation. So if other people told whatever they told people in the state of Texas as that hypothetical, yeah, I don't know who that would be in the official capacities of, but probably something I wouldn't consent to, obviously. So if some people thought of themselves as more in comparison, Well, I guess there's the modern day book, if that makes you feel special, you know, for those types, those references. And then there's, you know, my journal blog, the ordinary PSA with those updates, where you could feel special if that's what your preference was, since that would be on your choice a consent compared to me. So, in a similarity to Iowa 2018, I told some people about what I was dealing with in regards of one particular location when on my Medal of Honor art project trips. What is humanity is my question that I'm going to ask in this lecture as I explain this to you. So, in the year of 2017, during my Medal of Honor art project trip, I was looking for a particular individual. Started with an SH, and it just so happened to be a similar name to the JAG office at Fort Sam Houston, a colonel. You know, after the Dress Blue situation regarding the Chief Warrant Officer 3, but you know, that CID aspect, that whole thing that I was dealing with, you know, certain similarities of those types that where it would be common sense to just ask in truth, in comparison. And Sheridan, Colonel Sheridan, that JAG office, those references. And so those situations that I was already dealing with, you know, being a mom of 2 children on my own, after that particular military installation, had not ever paid attention to how I wound up off Fort Sam Houston to begin with, ironically even at the JAG office at Fort Sam. I even explained it at that office. Common sense. You know, for so many people with legal degrees, you'd think common sense. Though I explained medical hold unit and then later was informed as far as warrior transition unit in those regards. And so I spent over 3 or 4 hours in temperature that the vehicle in the shade said the temperature was 119 degrees in the shade. Now, I know there are those pogues that, you know, have those cushy jobs, such as, you know, Major General Gilman, who didn't actually ever go overseas and never actually do anything in those particular references. So why would someone like that ever pay attention? Although in that stirring up of needless drama regarding those situations at Camp Mabry, because how dare I salute the American flag during the national anthem, because why would anyone ever believe in their unit about someone who would do the Dress Blue JCPenney situation and actually acknowledge their mistakes? Common sense, though. What did I ever do that would have been worthwhile, right, boys? I mean, you know, maybe finding a silver lining explains a little bit in comparison. So, you know, if it was some sort of hazing garbage in comparison to ever pay attention, you know, why would you deserve compassion at that point? Especially after what I personally dealt with hypothetically, because of some of those types. In that hypothetical, that any of those types would have caused any needless drama. Because what would that matter at all? What type of example would you be setting for, others in comparison? So yeah, I just spent hours in the sun after all my work on my own. I didn't have anybody, like a team that was with me, actually assisting me in the correct capacities. I also didn't have anybody actually have etiquette, because protocol, especially in reference to the armed forces of the United States of America. I mean, who would know better when it comes to protocol and standards of? But I didn't graduate basic training. Well, I didn't learn anything when I was in the Army. Because, the only thing I learned when I was in the Army was the situations I fixed and repaired, and then that dependence stir up needless drama. That's all I learned. Otherwise, I didn't learn anything. So if that I-35 southbound situation, I did learn that I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. More specifically about that, I learned that because of that, I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. I learned that from the Army. I learned from the Army regarding my headaches, that word for that pain that I deal with on a daily basis. I also learned from the Army in regards to that situation what migraines are as far as those words. But that was the Air Force who taught me that. Then I also learned from the Army, as far as that's concerned, what the terminology is to memory deficits and cognitive disorders. Though that was, something I deal with because of my time in the Army, the Air Force explained that to me instead. That's what I learned. And then from the Army, as far as what else I learned about the sexism that was going on. I learned about the racism that was going on, because obviously I would have had to stand up for the female regarding her natural hair at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I learned about that. So in regards of that I-35 southbound semi-truck collision and being asked if I learned that, well, again, why would I ever learn how to do that from the Army? I mean, I didn't graduate basic training, right, boys? Didn't go to AIT. Right, boys? And girls? So I didn't actually learn anything other than that from the Army. I learned a lot of people in the Army have stolen valor. I did learn that. Yeah, when they go out to clubs, I learned that they do that. As far as Graham Central Station, for an example, for a male that did have a green ID card at the time, who claimed that he had done thousands of jumps through a bridle loop for a halo jump. Learn that. I wasn't in the Army at the time, though. It's already medically retired. So in regards of that news report situation and some whatevers in regards to the state of Texas, well, if it was wondered what I learned from the Army, There's that. Oh, then there's the Brackenridge rave situation. I learned how that got treated or mistreated. Then I also learned that even though I was 17 years old, how that situations went. I also learned in regards to 2008, as far as that CID situation, which was similar to 2000 in a different capacity as to the rave I dealt with, where I wound up in Brackenridge. Yeah, I learned that from the Army. Is that what I should have said on camera then? Would that have been better than being truthful, but it's still the truth? How about this? I learned from the Army regarding Major General Gilman that, in a Major General's office, while he was wearing a uniform on a military installation, that he was willing to call me a royal fucking cunt while being a legal widow, although we were already separated for the second and final time. But, doing that, because when has the Army ever not paid attention to that? Such as when Major General Gilman complained, where he claimed that I should get over what happened in Medical Hold Unit, because they changed the name to Warrior Transition Unit. Other than being a mom to 2 children after Medical Hold Unit, didn't pay attention to those details. Was I supposed to go over that in front of the camera in 2008 about what I learned? Would that have been better? That a Major General called me a royal fucking cunt in uniform in his office after I was taken off a military installation at the age of 17 years old, and how that individual regarding those dress blues and that situation, was I supposed to go over that at that point in time? After I saved that guy's life? Was I supposed to go over that being learned in the year 2008? Huh? Army? Was that what I was supposed to go over instead? How about that captain while I was in E1 and that Article 15? After all that, was I supposed to go over learning that on camera in the year 2008? Was that supposed to be gone over at that point in time? Or was it more important to just give credit where credit was due and not focus on that because of the time frame that my son and my daughter, while I was pregnant, when I had that subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, at that point in time, after, as a 17-year-old, that I was taken off of a military installation? Was I supposed to go over that? Army? Pentagon? Was that what I was supposed to go over at that point in time? Not that in this lecture, there's that actual answer, because that would require in-person, face-to-face, in-person, and I doubt that Major General Gilman at that point in time would actually be capable to tolerate that in-person, face-to-face, in-person. I would guesstimate he might cringe, along with all those other boys and girls. Those types. hypothetically. And then, was I supposed to go over in 2008 regarding that semi-truck collision? Was I supposed to go over those 3 firearms in my face that were loaded inside that same Major General's office? Less than a month from that point in time. Was I supposed to go over that? I learned that from the Army. Or was I more calm? I'll believe that anything was worth my time in reference to my work when I actually have a reason to. Because realistically, I haven't seen a reason that any of my work has ever been appreciated. In truth. Because that requires genuine truth. You know, that's what human beings would do. Because that's humanity. But you know, I haven't ever dealt with that. So, yeah, I could be inaccurate. However, if there were any needless problems regarding those types, whether in reference to 2000 or 2008, and or 2007, because of Camp Mabry, you know. Well, I don't know if I really can find a silver lining at that point in time. If any of those had anything to do with what I dealt with in regards to my daughter, my son, and I don't know if I could, in truth. Because what would there be? At all. In any capacity of. I know. I mean, realistically, I don't know what would ever be considered a silver lining. If that's the case. If that had to do with any in that capacity. What is female rights? You know, that female first sergeant and how that situation went. You know, in comparison, I already wrote about that though after discussing it. You know, because why would anybody ever pay attention to the fact that a drill sergeant did that in comparison to what they paid attention to that I didn't graduate basic training? Why would they ever actually pay attention to that? That would be common sense. Or why would they ever pay attention to the fact that I was 17 years old? That would be common sense in comparison. You know, but if they're assumptions, because, you know, those types, depending on. So sure. I handled stuff And just because I was looking at what I was looking at doesn't translate to in the civilian sector, that sort of stuff. Yeah, you're supposed to leave that on the field in comparison. And so while some might assume, what military guy has ever assaulted their spouse? I mean, I know that the ASVAB requirement for infantry is a 31 to be capable to do that. And I don't know what the ASVAB score in regards of cavalry, as far as that's concerned, or combat arms. MP either, I don't know. I don't know what that ASVAB score minimum requirement is. I had earned a 98 on my ASVAB. So as long as that's something that's kept in mind, you know, regarding the Army branch. Well, there's those factors. And then there's my invitation to Marine and Science Technology School with the Navy attachment. So if there were a bunch of people in the Army who, which I did deal with in regards to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, they had wanted to know why a 17-year-old had an Omega clearance. So, you know, there are those who can do the math as to that common sense, as to what I dealt with, just from that particular lecture. And then whatever else is known, capable to be found. So what did I learn from the Army? What not to do. I learned a lot of stuff of what not to do. I suppose is the way to put it. So, you know, because what would be the situations that would be capable to prove that? So, and then what other connection points would there be, you know, to Fort Sill, Oklahoma? I mean, other than Specialist Carlton showed up from Fort Sill, Oklahoma in Medical Hold Unit after Drill Sergeant Parsley called Medical Hold Unit. I learned that. You know, that was just before the Rave Brackenridge situation. And then there's that Midnight Rodeo situation where before Alicia had walked up to where I was, that male who had said he had been a drill sergeant at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And Sergeant Baber, despite the situations regarding CID, after I returned back to the state of Texas, those 3 males outside of BAMC that I had already wrote about. But what did I ever do that was actually worthwhile in any capacity of, to be appreciative of at all, then again, what did I actually do to actually deserve what I've dealt with because of that? I did learn that, although I don't know what I actually did to deserve those situations. You know, other than being patriotic and 17 years old. And, you know, I guess maybe, I don't know, I went to go save the world. Did I make a mistake? If that's the case. Because if there were a bunch of military guys around while I was dealing with what I was dealing with that could have actually assisted, well, what good of a use are you at that point? Because what did you do that was worthwhile? In comparison, knowing what I was dealing with. Knowing what 2 minors dealt with because of that. What is the legal term in reference to, well, quite a few situations I brought forward? So why am I supposed to believe in humanity? Even within the active duty, especially National Guard or reservists, or even veterans or dependents at that point in time, as to what I personally dealt with, and all the others, if there was any connection thereof from those types. Talk about overstepping boundaries. But hey, what would there be as to proof on that? Because, well, what did I ever do that would warrant that? In comparison. Last I checked, in comparison to a bunch of individuals I met in person, face to face in person, in and out of uniform, regarding the Army branch, well, what did I learn? Well, there's finding a silver lining and finding the silver lining. And so if in addition it was because I refused to call myself a certain aspect, because, you know, the Marine Corps viewpoint, well, how many times have you had to deal with the problems from stolen valor? Maybe if you actually did things correctly, instead of trying to sweep things under the rug, you'd actually get something accomplished correctly. Instead, you know, as far as how, whatever proof thereof. Because, well, what is there that is of any value or worth, you know, to me? Oh. Well, I have some experiences. Whoop-de-doo. Were they worth my time? I don't know if I can actually say so. in truth. Because, you know, what would actually be worth my time? In truth. So then there's those other factors of what I dealt with needlessly. So after 22 years, what did people in the Army learn that was worthwhile? In truth. Because as far as I can see, I'm failing to see what was worth my time. And my effort. And my work. Because what are women's rights? You know, I'm just a female. So, what is my scuba dive colors? And what's my BDSM colors? And what would be considered as to that regarding anybody associated? Especially if there was any Army connection to that. On US soil? Huh. Would that be done to a male in comparison? Or is it only because I'm a female? Because if there's no male that has ever before me, specifically in that reference of, what would that translate to? Because if there were a bunch of individuals at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, who had a problem with me standing up for a female, it's African American, regarding her hair, that's natural, as a starting point, well, what automatic racism and bigotry right off the bat? It's not my fault you didn't know about my cousin Jade. That's your fault. But what does that say in regards to Oklahoma? I don't know. Especially with the irony about McCoy Elementary School in Carrollton, Texas. You know, like Carlton Homes in New Jersey, though Carlton from Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And why would I ever want to date an Army guy after what I dealt with? I wouldn't ever want to be associated in a relationship with someone in the Army in that capacity. Because, ew, after what I dealt with. Yeah, if it were to be a military individual, I'd only be capable as to a Navy guy or a Marine or a Coastie in comparison after what I personally dealt with. That is if I'm accurate. Though if there were needless problems regarding my scuba diving, well then I guess that would reverse as far as the Army or the Air Force or just a civilian in comparison. Law enforcement instead, or, you know, whatever. But I'd actually have to trust. And what is there to trust? after what I've dealt with? Who would there actually be to trust after what I've dealt with? Is that how you treat an American citizen regarding the branches and divisions of? Or is it because of my clearance at the age of 17 and those types? Because then, what type of problems are those regarding those types who don't like certain things? I mean, what logistical individual would actually need that type of a clearance? I mean, can't have to really be to that simple of common sense. Sure, it's considered as a pogue job. However, I mean, what military installation anywhere would ever require that type of a clearance background for a logistical individual? I mean, what military installation has a logistical center? Or would that be something that certain individuals wouldn't think about back in 2000? At Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Because why would that ever make sense? Depending on your ASVAB score, correct? I guess that depends. To what level of common sense you'd actually have. That I had been the sponsor, Camp Mabry. In comparison to your assumptions. Those types. And how many of you have been faithful? Would you have some similarities to my dead ex-husband when he was alive? I would guesstimate, hypothetically, I did meet one who acknowledged it, named Brett. I don't remember his last name, but he was a redhead ginger. And so, why would it be considered hypocritical of anybody that would go overseas be willing to break that commandment and cheat on their spouse, yet ever have an issue with a second and final separation? What type of hypocrisy would that be for those types? What level of common sense would you need to have? And then with the fact that those dress blues went over to Iraq, what does that tell you who had been stationed at Tallil Air Force Base or wherever in that capacity? It was in your camp. You know how logistics are. And what would my pattern of behavior actually be? I've had to defend myself a whole bunch of times. What an irony. What is it to actually be capable to not have to deal with that in any capacity of, where I could actually relax instead. And then there's what happened in reference to my daughter, my son, and I. So what would that translate to in that reference? Because intention would be important regarding the modern day book. So with intention, that umbrella wouldn't count if it was to cause needless problems. Just so that's known regarding having signed that dotted line. That's only if it's literally in the name, in an honorable intention in comparison. But the proof would need to be there if it was in an honorable capacity. It's got to be in an honorable way. Again, though, I didn't actually invite anybody. And if it was actually out of my protection, for my safety, well, where would that have actually been? Wouldn't that require actually speaking with me? And taking into consideration what would actually be required, instead of assuming in that hypothetical? Or did you just think it was coloring a bunch of pictures instead, even with the background of? Unless. But then there's those types in regards of Old Tenet Presbyterian Church. As I was informed, there was this argument and the church was divided. And Pastor Mackenzie had a lot of problems because of certain factors. So what would be worthwhile if that was a problem because of that? Because what type of influence in the correct capacity would that ever be in any way, in any shape, or in any form in those references? New Jersey, 1980s, 1990s. All that technology. All that length of time. Just think, what could be found regarding those mergers? I don't know. Go to my website, www.susanmealing.com. And if you're gonna comment, make sure to do so with etiquette and respect. And like and share the link to my official YouTube videos. And subscribe to my official YouTube channel.